Good morning. You're listening to the BLAINESWORLD show, heard every Wednesday at 9 a.m. here on WPBM 103.7 LP in Asheville, North Carolina. This is the BLAINESWORLD show, and I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and I'm here at my lovely studio in downtown Fairview, North Carolina. And each week we focus on the Asheville theater scene, as well as other news and information about people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And to that end, it's my pleasure to introduce my first guest. He is Mark Cameron, and he's an artistic director of Third Eye Productions. Welcome aboard, Mark.
A pleasure to be back.
Okay, and there he is.
I haven't seen you in 18 months. Well, I've seen you, but I haven't been on your show in 18 months.
Can you imagine? And he just waved to all his fans and friends on Facebook world. And Mark is directing, and we'll talk about this in just a second, a production of Calendar Girls by Tom Firth. His first time was COVID interrupted, and we'll talk about that in just a second. And it was closed down to 3 performances and big advance ticket sales. And one of many shows that closed. And we now have a new venue and a few cast members. We'll talk about the status of that show. But before we do that, Mark, I don't think I've ever asked you, Third Eye Productions, what is that?
Third Eye Productions is my own small little fledgling theater company that was on kind of a nice roll, and then COVID hit. So I was in the process, I was doing Calendar Girls out at Foothills Community Theater, and I was halfway through directing Three Tall Women, which was going to happen at Henderson Community Theater about a month after Calendar Girls would close. That was 18 months ago. And then I had a couple other things to direct and a couple other shows. I had 5 things going, and I only did a half of one. 3 performances of 6. And so Third Eye Productions kind of got put back on the back burner for a while. There was no live theater really happening, no collaborations. I did find, coming out the other end of COVID for the brief period of time that we did, that some of the theaters I was scheduled to, Third Eye was scheduled to do some collaborations with, they no longer were interested in collaborations, and I don't blame them in the sense that they wanted all the money they could possibly make because everybody lost money. It's my own personal production company. It's my own personal money. I mean, I could take a tax write-off or whatever. I'm dependent on other venues to collaborate with me. And so now I have to kind of think about how that's going to happen again. And I've reached out to a few, but to be honest with you, I just think some of the larger theaters are going to have to absorb and work with some of these smaller theater production companies. And because the smaller venues are just not profitable, I'm not even sure the bigger venues are that profitable these days.
Well, what you're saying is so true in that even the small venues, but any venue, even when they have shows, and I was starting to go to a couple of shows, they're only at 50% capacity, So as you said, if you're a big theater, that's hard enough. But if you're a small little theater and you only have 50% of the people, that's not a lot of people.
We were fortunate with Calendar Girls that we were leaving the space in downtown Marion at Maca, whatever they call it. And we were actually moving into and started rehearsals at McDowell Technical College. And we went from like a 100-seat theater to a 255-seat theater. But we were going to eliminate the first 2 rows. We were going to do social distancing. We talked about the possibility of asking for vaccinations. But out in McDowell County, there's not a high percentage of people vaccinated. So if you're going to have half a house, why eliminate another half of the house by requesting that they be vaccinated? And then we'd end up losing money or not even breaking even.
Well, since you mentioned it, Mark, let's talk a little bit about then Calendar Girl in McDowell County, because as you know, I was really looking forward to seeing it. I missed the run of three shows. So then you're going to be open. When were you originally supposed to be open in McDowell? What date?
Oh, we were going to open, pretty soon, the 24th of September.
Right. And so I was already planning to, get there and get tickets.
Yeah.
And you just
I
told
would have
me,
seen you at one of the matinees.
Okay, exactly. But then you told me off the air that we already made the decision. Let's see, the show will be aired after that opening, I guess, was planned, but it turns out now, for the second time, you're not going to be doing Calendar Girls yet in McDowell County. Is that so?
As wonderful as it was to get a second chance to do another show like that again for a director, and I had 95% of the actors come back, so that was a compliment. And we had a whole new venue. Um, but we always knew we had that little dark cloud hanging over us. And it's a personal decision. I mean, the board makes their decision. McDowell Technical College has their own community that they have to protect. The governor makes his own decisions. And so we met. We were rehearsing 3 days a week. We were already blocked through Act Two and starting to do some individual, which I love doing, individual one-on-ones with the actors. And so we were growing it, but we always knew that the rug could be pulled out from underneath us. And we were proactive, and we as actors decided to pull the rug out from ourselves. And we delayed it until May of 2022. And hopefully, third time will be a charm.
Okay, but yeah, I certainly hope so, because show I really want to see.
It's a great show.
Yeah, but that must be tough, even as director, certainly actors as well. You're the first one I think I've heard that's gotten 2 times. You're putting off the show.
Oh, I'm sure there'll be others.
Yeah, that must be tough, though, in terms of as a director. What's it like to you to have to, the first time do the show for three performances, then get taken down, then the second time didn't even get up to do the show on the on stage? Is that tough as a director to have to deal with?
Well, I think it's really tough, and I think underneath it all there is a little level of COVID interruptus, COVID killing of the arts, and I think a lot of very motivated people are maybe a little less motivated these days, or I myself had to channel that artistic energy into something else completely because there was no theater, live theater happening. And it's still iffy how much live theater is happening and how much of it is happening safely. Every theater company I know makes their own personal decision on what they're going to request of their audience, what they're going to request of their cast and crew. I personally was supported in making the decision as a director that the Calendar Girls would be all vaccinated, cast and crew, and we would wear masks during rehearsals, and actors would choose to wear a mask on stage or not for performances. That would be entirely up to them. But we had some actors that refused to perform if the governor or the facility said we had to wear masks for performances. So we were always unfortunately, I hate to say this, we're always at the mercy of somebody's decision on COVID. But we kept our wits about ourselves, and we just enjoyed the heck out of every rehearsal we had.
What's sad is that a couple of shows I've seen lately is that even at reduced capacity, as you're pointing out, some people are still reluctant to even come to the shows, so that even though they're open, even at reduced capacity, Mark, they're not even getting full reduced capacity, because a lot of people just don't want to go out.
I haven't seen a lot of theater as an actor. I mean, I saw some outdoor stuff at Montfort.
Right.
I've seen I was a big fan of small venues. I love 35 Below and the BB and Magnetic, but I love a small, intimate audience. And with COVID, even though I'm vaccinated and I am lucky enough to even have had my booster because I've worked in healthcare for many years, so I felt safe, but I didn't feel safe enough to go as often as I used to go. So even I, as an actor, an artist, and a director, and a producer, have pulled back considerably. I would say 75%. That's a lot.
Well, it's, as you're saying, it's kind of tough for me as just kind of a big fan, because as you know, I try to see something every weekend, Yeah. And even that's getting harder to find stuff, because some of the big theaters are just kind of in the process of being opened. And you and I were talking off the air, and you can talk a little bit about that. And even then, people are upset with the decision. We were talking about one theater, we don't have to mention name, but you were telling me that people are upset that they're daring requiring proof of vaccination and masks.
And that may be, I mean, I don't want to go there, but it could be political. It could just be a statement of who they are in America. And that's all fine and good. But I remember responding to one of them saying, well, if you don't understand this, that we're doing our best to protect everybody and our best to fill our coffers back up for 18 months of no money and maybe $12,000 of a government check, how far is that going to go? If you're not going to at least wear a mask or not prove that you're vaccinated, then I really don't want you in my theater. Sorry. It just doesn't work. You're part of the problem. You're not part of the solution. So whine and complain and bitch all you want, but don't come to this theater because you're not prepared. It's a bigger picture, and a lot of people just don't get that. It's a big picture. And as a director, I had to think, I want a cast that's fully vaccinated, and I got everybody. I gave up some people that were not. And that's not an easy decision. I may have given up somebody who was more talented for a vaccinated person, but I had to do what I had to do. It made me feel comfortable. It made the board at Foothills feel comfortable. I've changed my career a lot in the last 18 months. I went back to media and film. And let me tell you, from set to set, project to project, if it's not a SAG union gig, there's no guarantee that anybody is following any rules. So you pretty much protect yourself.
Some of the people I know with the SAG gigs are upset that they have such rigid requirements, but they're looking for the health and well-being of their folks, and so that's.
I wish they all had those rigid requirements, and they don't.
I was going to say that. Well,
I just shot a music video in Nashville. In my opinion, as a nurse for 42 years, it was a little loosey-goosey. But they assured us that everybody was vaccinated, so that was a good thing. Did everybody wear their masks? Again, that's up to personal interpretation of when to wear your mask and when not to wear your mask on a set. And if nobody's watching, anything could happen. So you go from the most stringent to the loosey-goosey. And I'm actually in a movie was supposed to be shooting in Atlanta. Well, unfortunately, some of these actors had lied or used false records. And as they're shooting, I'm not on set, thank God. 2 people come down with COVID. Then the next thing we know, shooting's delayed. 6 people have COVID and 1's on a ventilator. These are young, healthy actors.
Yeah.
So
it's
hard to predict. I feel bad for the woman producing the film. This is her first film. She's probably pulled all her hair out by now because she thought she had it covered, and she didn't because people lied.
Talk about a little bit, Mark, your background, because it's always kind of amazed me in that I knew you had a background as a nurse, right? That would have been
I was a nurse for 42. Well, I still am a nurse,
right.
Although I think I'm letting my license go pretty soon. I don't have any intention of going back. But yeah, I worked in healthcare for 42 years under the name of William Brochinski. That's my legal name. Mark Cameron's a stage name I acquired in my 30s. When I went SAG for Miami Vice, my agent didn't like the ethnicity of my last name and told me I would never get work. And then when I went to Mark Cameron a couple months later, I got work. So she was right, but it's been a dilemma.
Well, talk about that. So when you were being a nurse, you were also acting at the same time?
Yeah, I started acting, studying at the Joy Zinnemann Conservatory in Washington, D.C. when I was like 22 or 23. And then I studied in New York, and I think I got my SAG card at age 30 or 33. I've been financial course, so I haven't done any kind of paid any SAG dues in a very long time. Now anybody can join equity, so I mean, if I want to do that, I could do that. But I always blended art and science to a degree. I always thought my nursing approach was very artistic, in a sense that there was more there than just facts and science and rules and regulations and pills and medicines. There was more heart to it. So even with a third eye, my small production company, my goal is to always blend art and humanity. And my goal as a director is always, always to pull out the humanity in a performance that sometimes is missed.
You
You could
play
play an illness, you can play a disease, you could play a conflict, but I don't want people to play anything. I want them to, on stage for the moment they're there, to live that and share it and put in their own stuff into it. So I've been fortunate enough so far to do that.
did you ever play a nurse?
I played doctors
Right.
because the world sees males as doctors. I don't think I've ever played a nurse, to be
There-
honest with you.
There's something
And
I could.
I was once cast as a nurse, but then two of the female doctors left. They left the program for whatever reason. They put some more male doctors in, and so they wanted to mix it up, and they cut me and they put in a female nurse.
So I could see you doing the play, just listening to you speak, the Wit, right? That's the name of the play.
Oh yeah, I've auditioned for that role.
Because I
Didn't
could,
get it, but I have auditioned.
but I could see you at a Third Eye production. I think that'd be a neat Third Eye production. I could see you doing something like that. When did you
It's
start?
interesting. It's
Yeah.
interesting during COVID. Uh, People are selecting very different plays, and some of the serious drama stuff that has to do with life or death or cancer or even Three Tall Women. I've had a hard time selling that to 4 or 5 different theaters. Just say it's not the tone of what we want, but it's still great art. So I'm just going to have to wait for them to find out it, or let them say it's now the tone. Let's go for it. So
Well,
I'm
you
a
point,
classics guy. I want classic pieces.
but you point to an interesting one in that I also think you're seeing, Mark, people doing smaller productions. So you're not going to see even 8, 10 people in the cast. You're going to see which I think you're really good at, 2 or 3. Yet Calendar Girls I haven't seen yet. So the movie,
12
how many? 12 in that, which is
with
you know,
some multiple roles.
okay, because that's considered large now. Because a lot of theaters I'm
Very
seeing
large.
are having smaller and smaller.
And a
Just
lot of theaters aren't doing concessions, no meet
right.
and greet afterwards. All the social aspects of going to theater are kind of eliminated and restricted. And I don't know, I guess as an audience member, that could be a little bit of a turnoff.
Well, your point's again well taken. Diana Wortham did the same thing too. You had to wear a mask the entire production, so you couldn't even bring in a beverage. You just had to be masked the entire production. And I think that has changed. The
Yeah,
social
things
nature.
have changed. Things have changed so much. Um, I have no complaints about it. I mean, at least I was resilient and could reinvent myself. And so now I'm on Actors Access, I'm on casting networks, I'm on my second agent, and I'm booking stuff semi-regularly. So I have no complaints because I'm in the rebuilding of my film, TV, media career. And you know what? There's a little part of me that goes, how much more theater will you do? I mean, I just turned 60. I'm turning 65 in November 1st, 1956. Gifts accepted. No, I'm just kidding. Um, my big gift is Medicare and Social Security. But I don't know how much directing and acting is in my future. I mean, maybe another 5 years and then.
Well, I was going to ask you, when did you start getting into directing?
Oh, the directing happened when I was in California. I was studying at the Beverly Hills Playhouse, and they don't teach you acting, they teach you everything. And I would say that's probably when I got the directing bug.
What's the first play you directed?
First play I directed?
Or one of the first
God, I
ones?
don't even remember. It must have been something. I have a feeling it might have been, if it wasn't Three Tall Women, it might have been something of an Albee play in Connecticut at one point. I didn't direct in California, but I did direct when I got back to Connecticut. So it could have been that, or maybe it was, I don't know, it's so long ago.
Now, do you have a preference
That's a
acting?
good question. I'm going to answer that next time
Okay.
I'm on.
Do you have a preference acting or directing?
Now, preference directing.
Why is that?
I'll be honest with you. Acting's tough. You saw me do Red. I had 68. I had 68% of the dialogue. I worked my brain to the bone trying to memorize that stuff. I mean, it's true. As you get older, you don't have that facility. And
But
younger actors need to know that when they're working with actors in their mid 60s, that may not come as quickly as it comes to you. So don't give them a hard time about it, and do what you can to help them. And when I did the Underpants out at Heart, the cast was very loving, and that was a big role for me, and I hadn't done big roles in a while. And it was a challenge to learn all those lines. I would do it if it was the right play. I certainly would do Red again. I've done it 3 times. I would definitely do that again. But I don't know. I certainly wouldn't do a one-man show. I'd direct a one-man show or direct a
well,
20-man show, but nah.
accepting, Mark, the advantage I see of doing one man show is that you're the only one who knows if you're screwing up the lines. So accepting your director may know it. But talk a little bit about that process also. That I was fortunate to see you in Red, and if ever there was a part written for somebody, I said, "Wow, you seem to really hit that part." Talk about Red, and first of all, benefit the folks who don't know it. What's the show about?
The show is about Mark Rothko, the expressionistic painter from the 50s and the 60s in New York. A very gritty, opinionated, strong, demanding, almost a borderline abusive personality.
Completely
Uh,
unlike you. Completely unlike you, by the way, right?
oh, I can be a mother.
No, I'm being a little facetious. I could see, it's almost, it seemed, I don't know you real well, but it almost seemed as if the role was written for you. So I'm sorry I cut you off.
Even Jeff said that. Jeff Messer, who directed a couple times, he's like, "This role is for you." And actually, because I look a little younger than my age, I probably could do it for another 5 years. And I would pursue it. I did see an opportunity in South Carolina recently, but they wanted equity people. And I don't know, I sometimes feel a little, I don't want to go that route. Um, Plus, there's so few equity roles out there for equity
Right.
actors because there's so few equity theaters. I figured I'm not going to go steal that from somebody. Not that my ego said I would, but
Well,
I
what,
would
what,
find a production of it or reproduce another production of it for myself in the near future. But I'm still telling you, after 70, I don't even know if I want to do Mark Rothko. But it's a very intense one act, 90 minutes long, 85 to 90 minutes, depending on the pace of the director. um, but it's a beautiful, powerful play. And we actually have a new community center here in Weaverville, where I live, that just opened recently. And I'm probably going to present that as a reading and maybe even do Three Tall Women and a couple other plays that I wanted to do as readings. I think readings are a little less involved now
sure.
and might work better in an unknown world of COVID. Because you put in all this time and effort in a production and you get 3 performances or no performances. Let's work on a reading. Small, people come or they don't come, they socially distance. It is what it is. And I can live with that and maybe be a fundraiser and make money along the way for the venue I'm in and even myself.
Let me ask you, Mark, for that show or other shows, what's your feeling about Zoom performances, and have you done any?
I did a Zoom performance for a Catholic Christian school outside of Boston, and I was actually booked to play Matthew, the older gentleman in Anne of Green Gables. But unfortunately, a production company switched their week, so I had to go out to Knoxville to play a detective. And so I didn't do that, but I did do Little Women for them. And I didn't really enjoy the experience at all. It was just so fragmented. I felt like Paul Lynn in Center Square. It just was like, nah, this isn't working for me. And even though you wear a costume, there's always a little bit of a delay, so you have to jump your line ahead of the delay. I mean, I've seen some wonderful things with big budgets, but most of us have no budget or a very limited budget. And to take a limited budget, even well acted piece and mount it virtually, I have no
Well,
criticism of it. It just doesn't work for me.
even as you're describing it, I'm kind of agreeing with you, with the exception of some musicals I've seen or people just performing.
Oh, well, if you're going
Right.
to see, Manuel do
Right.
his big production. That's going to work on screen. I mean,
Right.
you got money, you got 3 or 4 cameras, it works. You know, if you're unfortunately Henderson Community Theater or any little community
Right.
theater, you got one camera, you're going to lose my interest eventually.
What's it like putting on a whole show? Talking to you, I'm reminded of like the Mickey Rooney and Judy Garland, kinds of productions that, again, one of the first times I met you, I was so impressed that you not only were you were acting in Red, but you put on the whole production. Is that correct? When you did it the first time I saw it?
Yeah, I produced it. All
Yeah.
3 times I
Right.
produced it.
What's that like?
Well, you can't do theater, small theater for sure, and think you're going to make any kind of money. I learned over time that you can't collaborate with a venue and expect that that venue is going to pull in any audience members or make money with you. It was a learning experience. I would renegotiate things. I would do things differently. But when you're small and fledgling, I mean, there were so many small theater companies that used 35 below over
Right.
the years. And then they moved up and did other things. I mean, I wasn't fortunate enough to ever get in there. But now I wonder, are those venues going to be used? Will the be used? It's
Right.
43 or 45 seats. Can you
Yeah.
make money?
And
So,
right, I don't think I've seen anything, and I haven't seen them being open at all, the BB Theater.
I mean, I feel sorry for guys like Steve Samuel who were on
Right.
a roll. They were on a roll. They were doing some good stuff, and I was enjoying it. And that's the kind of theater I like to see. And then where are they now? They're in the same boat as way too many of us are.
Well, Steve, now to his credit, you probably know it. He's now um, publishing plays,
Yeah,
trying to get them out, which kind of
we've
had him.
all had to reinvent ourselves.
Right. And in terms of that, Mark, you were mentioning this idea of reinventing yourself. So now you're not doing 5 shows at once. Now you're down to, this in May. What are some other things again you're moving into in the future?
Well, I think I'm gonna maybe do 1 or 2 plays a year, either acting in them or producing, keeping them very small, maybe focus on the play readings before going into full productions. But I personally have focused on my TV, film, and movie career, and which I had when I was living in Los Angeles, and that has worked out pretty well for me. I'm making some money. I just did. It was a great job. I was cast as a widower grieving about his loss of his wife in a Jelly Roll, who was a hick rapper. It was shooting out in Nashville. He has a new song coming out. It's kind of a country song, and he was making a music video. Well, they hired 8 actors. He says the words to the song, and the other 8 actors are in the same position. A robot shoots us, perfect, exact measurements of everything. And so, hopefully, in the end, there will be Jelly Roll with his new music video single, and then 8 actors. So, hopefully, I'll survive the editing. But I just take those jobs one at a time. I mean, out in Knoxville, they have a lot of those murder shows, and I was on a show for killer couples, and I was a cop and I got 3 days of work because I looked like the cop who played the part. I mean, who was the investigator. So I'm just taking those one at a time, and who knows? At the end, I might have a career.
Was that the first music video you ever did?
The first music video I have ever done, and it was a big green screen behind us, and it was really an incredible experience. Did I make a lot of money? But it doesn't matter. I'm at a point in my life where I don't need to make a whole lot of money. I'd rather have really good experiences that I could add to my resume and build than make $10,000. Although I have some things in the hopper that are going to pay some money.
Well, Cameron, if folks want to get in touch with you or find out more about you, what you're next going to be into, what's the best bet?
Well, I do have a page connected to my Facebook page under Mark Cameron, so you can look that up. I also have a Third Eye Productions, which is a page connected to my Facebook account. But my Facebook account is William Brochinsky, Brochinsky, and I haven't been in Facebook jail in quite some time, so you can communicate with me.
And also,
Uh,
as I've told you, Mark, please use I now set up that entertainment page, and so look for anything Mark's being involved in. It'll also post it on the Facebook entertainment page, and if you're not on that, I encourage you to get on that as well.
sure, I am on
And
it.
okay, great, and I look forward to seeing you. Then I will definitely see it on calendar, girls.
Keep your fingers crossed.
Okay, was it May?
May 2022, but that could change.
Okay. Anyway, thanks, Mark, as always, for
A
being my guest
pleasure.
on the Blaine's World Show, and I hope to actually see you in person in real time at some point in time, buddy. Thanks.
All right. Take
Okay,
care,
thanks
guys.
a lot. Okay,
Bye.
as Mark kind of, let me see if I can make Mark disappear. I think I
Make me
can.
disappear.
Okay. It's not
Bye.
there. There he goes. Okay, and as our second guest works his way into the studio, let me mention that WPBM's mission is to foster community through programming that cultivates dialogue to inform and entertain. The station provides a network medium for artists, businesses, community leaders, and nonprofits to share their voice on live radio. Listeners are invited to help support WPBM's efforts by making a tax-deductible contribution. You can do so by going onto the website, wpbmfm.org, and looking at the donate option on the upper right-hand side. It's next my pleasure to introduce my second guest of today's Blaine's World Show, and he is Tom Mock. And welcome aboard, Tom.
Good to be here, Blaine.
Okay, and you can wave, by the way, to all your fans and friends in Facebook world. Okay, so if everybody's watching Tom, and I should mention that Tom, I know Tom a bunch of years here. He is chair of a group called Asheville SCORE. We'll mention that in just a second. He's a chapter chair. And Tom, you've been doing that for the last, 27 years, it seems like, or?
Only 4, but it does seem like 27.
No, but I want to compliment you. I think, is this true? You have the record, or are you going to have the record as long as
I do have the record.
Amazing. But Tom does a great job as a chair of Asheville SCORE. He's retired marketing and communications executive from the telecommunications industry. His most recent assignment was running corporate marketing PR for a communications equipment manufacturer in the Washington, D.C. area. His experience includes corporate marketing, market research, product marketing, PR, investor relations, and product management. And Tom, how did you get, well, let's start with that. How did you get into that whole field when you were a kid?
I actually started my career as an engineer and spent 15 years as an engineer and started a small communications company in Atlanta. And then I moved back up to Washington. And when I did that, I decided, one of the things I had a talent for was being able to take fairly complicated technical ideas and express them in a way that lay people could understand. And that led me into a marketing and communications career. I started basically doing just your ordinary product stuff. But as time went on, I started doing, company positioning, branding, investor relations, things like that.
Well, it's funny you say that because I want to put you on the spot here, Tom. And we're going to ask you something that we do with our SCORE clients. And that is, Tom, I meet you for the first time. We're on the radio. You're meeting other people. How about giving us a good old-fashioned elevator pitch for SCORE? What is SCORE?
I'll give it. Yeah, SCORE is basically an organization that provides help in the form of mentoring and education for small businesses. So our charter is to make sure that if you want to get a small business, that you have the resources to get one started. So we can provide a lot of the infrastructure for you in terms of knowledge and in terms of advice and things like that. What we don't provide is loans. You'll have to go to another, even though we're an SBA affiliate, you'll have to go to another SBA affiliate to get loans. So really our mission is education and mentoring.
Well, you really did a good job, especially with the first part. That was, one of the problems we have, Tom, and you've seen it too. You ask somebody, what's your business about? And they can't explain it, and if you can't explain it, your business, you might want to rethink that a little bit. In terms of SCORE's mission, then, are you seeking primarily startups or people who've already been in business for a while?
We have probably a pretty good mix of that. I mean, our kind of sweet spot is a company with fewer than 5 employees. We do have some that are larger than that, but generally our skill set is most helpful to smaller companies who, Somebody started a business, they're very good at what they do, but they're not particularly good at running a business. So what we can do is help them learn the things that they need to learn to be able to run the business on their own, or help them ask the questions they need to ask to make the right strategic decisions for their business.
What about people who have never run a business or started a business before? Can they pick up the skills through SCORE?
They can. I mean, there's no brain surgery to running a business. We offer a lot of seminars that are focused on the specific skills that people need to learn to be able to run a business. And part of what we do as mentors, and we choose the word mentor very carefully because we don't do the work for them. What we try to do is teach them how to do the work themselves, because one day they're going to want to do this on their own and they'll need the skills to do it. And at a minimum, they'll need the skills when they go to hire an accountant and a lawyer to understand what they need from that professional.
And I think you raise a good point there, Tom. As one of the beauties, I think, some of our seminars, I'll tell people, say accounting, you're not going to learn to be an accountant by going to a SCORE seminar, but you might learn what to ask your accountant or how your accountant can help you. And I think that's kind of useful information.
Yeah, and you might learn, for example, what are the important things to look for in your financial statements so you can tell if your business is healthy. You might be able to look at what kind of financial projections do I need to do if I have a seasonal business that'll make sure I don't run out of cash when business dries up for a while. So those, just understanding those sorts of things helps people make better decisions.
It's funny, as you mention it reminds me of one of the things I always enjoyed when I was a SCORE, counselor working with lots of new clients, is to help people realize that they're in business to make money, and so some people, Tom, and we talk about that, with clients, that they don't realize that, spending lots of money, but they deserve, and when you talk about this a little bit, they deserve to get paid also. If you run a business, and I'll ask you your opinion on that, do you have the right to get paid?
Oh, you totally do. And in fact, I think one of the biggest mistakes that a lot of our clients make is they undersell their services. They don't charge enough, because what they're thinking about is how they ought to set their price in terms of what it costs them to produce their good or service. They don't think about it in terms of what it's actually worth to somebody. And generally, it's worth a lot more than it costs you to do it.
Well, I find kind of hand in hand in that. I also find clients who don't realize that they should get paid as well, so that if they ever looked at it, they might be making $2.32 an hour, but they don't see themselves getting paid. So they pay everybody else. They pay for rent, they pay all the other good stuff. But if they're not making any money in the business, maybe they shouldn't be in business, where that's something to look at.
Yeah, or they ought to look at why they're not making money. It could be a pricing problem. It could be a cost problem. There are a number of things they could be looking at. But to your first point, people deserve to get paid personally in addition to the business making money. The business wouldn't be there if it weren't for you. So one of the things I always ask clients when they first come in, particularly if they're just starting a business, is, what does success look like for you financially? Because once we understand that, then we can help them work backwards from, let's say, their answer is, I want to make $100,000 a year from my business. Then we can help them work backwards to figure out what has to happen in their business to make that dream come true.
What about, Tom, people coming into SCORE and then finding out that maybe the business isn't for them, and that does happen. Is that a good or bad thing?
I think it's a good thing. We don't ever tell somebody that you're not suited for business. What we try to do is ask them the right questions so they begin to understand that themselves. And usually the issue isn't so much that they're not a good business person. The issue is that they're not ready yet to start a business. What a lot of people don't understand is you can run through your retirement savings trying to get a business off the ground. And if you haven't thought about all the right things up front and you aren't properly prepared when you get started, you're likely going to run out of money before your business becomes profitable, and then you have nothing. So we think it's a real important part of our mission to make sure that people understand that their expectations are reasonable expectations, and that if they aren't reasonable expectations, they need to go back and change something in their business model to make it more reasonable. Well,
I would say with clients sometimes that I can also serve as an agent of reality. I'm just here to help you. But I like how you said it, and kind of elaborate on that, if you would, that it's not my job to tell them that this is not for them or it is for them. It's up, I guess, for them to decide that themselves.
It is. And what we try to do is guide them through the right set of questions where they begin to understand, for example, that I'm opening a restaurant, but I'm only serving this sort of food, and the market is so small in this area, there's just no way they're ever going to make this get off the ground. So they either need to not do it or rethink their idea with something that has a broader market.
I love your point about, asking the right questions. What are some of the questions a person should ask himself or herself if starting a business is a good idea for them?
I think one of the most important ones is how committed are you to what you're doing and how passionate are you about the business? Because it's going to take a lot more time than you think to get the business off the ground. And if they get past, this is a passion for them and it's something that's feasible, the next two questions that we typically ask them is, how much money is it going to take you to get started until your business actually turns a profit? Because that'll tell them how much money they need to raise in order to get the business off the ground. And the second question we always ask them is, how much of your product or your service do you have to sell in order to be able to meet your financial goals? And if either one of those two things can't be answered properly, then that person's not ready to start a business yet. They need some help thinking through those issues.
And sometimes, like I've seen, and I think it's cool when it happens, they realize that, and then you don't hear from them again. But that's not such a bad thing,
Oh, it's not a bad thing. If you can stop somebody from spending their retirement account on a failed venture, that's a victory.
You mentioned another term, which I kind of like. You talked about passion. And how important is that, Tom, with respect to somebody starting, again, a business?
I think it's important. It's really important for two reasons. The first reason is you're going to be spending a lot of time on this. So it has to be something that you really, really want to do. And second of all, you're going to be chief salesman too. So people have to feel your passion in order to buy your product. You're going to be the person who's out there trying to convince them that they should buy your product or service. And if you're not passionate about it, it's going to be really hard to sell them.
How about experience in the field? Is that important for somebody to start a business, having experience in another business?
I think having experience in their particular field is important. The basics of running a business you can learn, but if you're going to have a competitive advantage, and that's really important to be able to make a business successful, then you've got to have knowledge or skills that are as good or better than your competition.
It's funny you say that. It reminds me of one client I had, Tom, and he wanted to start a car wash business, and at the time I didn't know much about car wash businesses, but it's a very expensive business to start, but he had backing on it. But I said to him this, I said, Chuck, and his name was Chuck, I said, have you ever worked in a car wash? And he never did. He said, do yourself a favor, get a job working in a car wash part-time and see if you like it. And the point of the story, true story, he worked 3 months in the car wash and decided he hated it, and fortunately he never went into that business, but I don't know about you, but I try to encourage people, if you can, to at least have some experience in the field to see if you like car wash, you like making ice cream, you like doing whatever, because you're going to be stuck with it for the next 20 or 30 years. You might as well be able to enjoy it.
Absolutely. I mean, we've all had the experience where what we've learned in a textbook in high school or college didn't turn out to be the way things really worked, or it didn't tell the whole story. I had a client once who wanted to get into a tour guide business. And we kept talking through, what are you going to do to differentiate yourself? What are you going to do to attract customers? And at the end of the conversation, he said, what I really need to do is go to work for a tour company and understand how this business works and figure out what I can do that may be better than what everybody else is doing.
And did he do that?
He did.
And did you start the tour business?
He did. He did. He started about 2 years later.
Okay, cool. But I think that's such a great example to see if you enjoy it. You mentioned another key point, Tom, that you and I talk a lot about, and the idea of differentiation, between your business and other people's businesses. Could you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, differentiation is basically the reason why somebody would buy from you than somebody else. How are you different from your competition? One of the mistakes that we see our clients make a lot is they want to address the broadest market possible. And the fact of the matter is, if you try to do that, it's very, very difficult to get differentiation because you're trying to serve a whole bunch of people. However, if you focus on a narrow segment of the market, then you can tailor your offering specifically to that market and be better differentiated. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't do other market segments as time goes on. But when you do that, then you've got to rethink what your value proposition in that new target market is and what your differentiation there is going to be.
And talk about the concept you just mentioned, the idea of value differentiation. What's that?
The big thing about differentiation is you'd be surprised how many people who are in business selling stuff don't really understand why their customers buy from them. Because a lot of times the differentiation has little to do with the actual product they're selling and more to do with the process of buying the product. So I'll give an example. I had a client once who was a photographer, and we started talking about why people buy from him. And his reason was that people love the quality of my work, the quality of their work. And when we started digging into it, what really people were buying from him, the reason people were buying from him was that he would do pickup and delivery services. So people who wanted to showcase their products didn't have to leave their stores. They could have a photographer come and do it, put it in his studio, do the photography. The quality of the work was a given because there are bunches of photographers out there, and it's not hard to find one who's good. What it is hard to do is find one who's easy to do business with.
It's such a great example because I also asked the question, one of my favorite questions to ask is, how is your stuff? You know, how is the photography you do? And it drives me crazy, Tom, when they answer, it's okay, you know, or it's good, you know. And so much on talking with what you're saying, and I'll tell you a funny photography story, is that good doesn't cut it, okay doesn't cut it. Why should I do business with you? You know, and the key is because you're better than other people. You do not, and you raise such a good point there. Not necessarily everything, but one specific thing makes you different than any other competitor, you know, and it's so important. I had the story, and then I'll go back to you, was we were in a seminar, SCORE seminar, and the guy said he's a photographer. I said, that's cool. Do you have a business card? And he did. And he did the right thing, Tom. He had a picture of photography on the business card because he's a photographer. So that's a really cool photo. Where'd you take it? Kid you not. He says, I didn't take it. So what do you mean you didn't take it? He got a stock photo from somewhere. And it drove me crazy because he's trying. I said, what an opportunity to show your stuff. And he's showing other people's stuff. Drove me crazy. But people, you're on target again. People don't consider that. Why should I do business? I'll put you on the spot again. SCORE. Why should somebody do business with SCORE? We won't mention the competition. There are other organizations out there doing good work that we do. Why should they go to SCORE?
You know, we partner with a lot of these organizations, but I think the thing that we do that's different is if you come into SCORE, you're going to be connected with somebody who has 20 plus years of experience in their field. So the depth of experience you're going to get from an organization like us will lead to a better outcome for a specific area. So for example, if you come to me and you want to talk about how should I build a value proposition for my company and how should I talk about myself and build my brand, I've done that for 20 years. So I can give them some really solid advice about it. So you know, if you're looking for somebody to just do broad, teach me everything about my business, we may not be the best choice. But if you come to us with a problem, we are a good choice to help you solve it.
Well, I also tell people when I meet them for the first time, I think another nice thing about SCORE, we're not against the clock, you know, in terms of, and we tell people this, and I always find this kind of interesting. Hey, I'm available in essence 24/7, but you can also see me as often as you need me, you know. And I don't know about you, Tom, but I find that when you have somebody who's really interested, they are going to contact you a second time or a third time, you know, as opposed to just a one time. And I have such a test. I don't know if you do this. The easiest test I have for somebody if they're serious is, one, are they taking notes, you know, when we're speaking? And two, I give them a little homework assignment, you know, just a little thing they have to do. And I don't know about you, but it bugs me that half time they do, maybe not even half time they never get back to me. Do you see that? We do.
I mean, you know, it's kind of a hazard in the business when you offer service that you're going to get people who may not be serious about what they're doing. Now, you mentioned a case earlier where, you know, somebody doesn't come back to you because they realize that they're not ready to do this yet. That's actually a good outcome. So, you know, I don't necessarily quarrel with it when we don't see people for repeat visits, although our goal is to build a long-term relationship with a client, because we feel like we can be a lot more helpful, you know, if we work with them over a period of time, because they can actually learn to do the things that they need to do to run the business.
And then we're available over, again, differentiate SCORE. I think we are available over a period of time. And nice thing is that we're not going to charge you.
Yeah.
Which is kind of nice.
And a lot of clients, I think, look at the idea that they're not being charged. They do the whole thing of equating price and value. So they may not realize the value of the service they're getting because it's free. But the thing to think about in a case like that is it's free because the people who are doing it are volunteers. And if the people who are doing it are volunteers, they're using their own time to do it, and they have to be passionate about it. And they have to be genuinely interested in a good outcome for the client.
You mentioned before that SCORE, of course, doesn't lend money, and we have to tell people up front. But what's your feeling about when you get somebody who comes in and they have, they want to start a business, great, but they need $200,000 or some other figure to start the business, and they have no idea how they're going to get that $200,000. And they also, Tom, don't want to put any of their money into it. They want to have nothing in it. How do you feel about that kind of person?
I usually turn that question back on the client and say, if you were in a situation where somebody was asking you to give them $200,000 and putting any of their own money in there, would you be comfortable doing that? And if you're not, then you need to change your approach if you're going to get somebody to lend money to you.
Well, I have to remember that. That's a great question. Just turn it around. I have to remember that. Thank you. You just told me something. No, I really like it. What about folks come in too? I'll ask kind of your advice on this, and do get it from time to time. But when a husband and wife come in together, want to start a business, what's your feeling about that?
I think I'll broaden it out to the general issue of partnerships.
Okay, please.
One of the most important things, if you're going to get into get into business with somebody, be it somebody you're related to or somebody that's a friend, is that you really understand what the dynamics of that partnership are going to be. So you understand who's going to be responsible for what. You understand who's going to make which decisions. You understand what are the expectations made of each party in terms of performance. Because if you don't have that, then there's no way really to resolve a conflict that happens down the road. If you have a 50-50 partnership and you didn't agree in the beginning how one partner could buy the other one out, what the terms would be to do that, and you get to that point and one partner wants out, it's almost an insolvable problem. It's something that's likely going to end up in mediation. But if you've agreed in the beginning that we're going to establish the value of the business using these metrics, and we'll get an outside auditor to value the business, and then that'll be the criteria we use to figure out what a buyout looks like. Then everybody knows where they stand when the process gets started.
It's so funny you said that, because as you know, I've even done some work with SCORE in this area. I tell people to put in their agreements, when they start the business, a mediation clause, and people have no idea what I'm talking about. But it's the idea, you kind of alluded to it, that you want to think it out in advance. Hopefully you're going to be successful for the next 50 years. But if you're not, or you want to get out of the business, how do you do that? And I think not enough people do that. You need to think about that up front, I think, as opposed to after the fact.
Oh yeah, you need to think about a lot of things. What happens if one of the partners dies?
Right.
How does the business get disposed of?
The
what
nerve.
happens if one of the partners wants to bring an additional investor in? How do you decide whether or not that's going to happen? So we offer, I think it's a 30-question questionnaire for people who are considering a partnership that they think through, and they need to be able to answer these questions. And they need to have a partnership agreement. If they answer those questions and they can take the answers to those questions to a lawyer, have them draw up a partnership agreement, and it's easy. The alternative to that is to just turn up at the attorney's office and spend 5 hours at $300 an hour or whatever, having him ask you all these questions, and you kind of think through the answers with him. So a big part of what we try to do is make sure people are prepared before they go seek professional advice.
Another point you raised, an interesting one, is the idea that, hey, you can go to a book or get forms, online, you get forms, but starting a business is a little bit more than just, copying forms and just setting it up. And I think that's, you mentioned to it, at times you do need to see an attorney. At times you need to see a SCORE counsel. We don't give legal advice, but I think that's a helpful part of the process, that people should realize that they can't just go on the internet and get a partnership agreement and this is the
Yes.
agreement. It's not a bad idea to check it out.
There are reasons that professionals exist, and a couple of areas where we generally tell people that you need to seek professional advice is around complicated tax issues, around legal issues and agreements, and around patents and trademarks, because all of those are fairly complicated areas. And if you make a mistake, it can invalidate a lot of your work.
And again, I think that the point with SCORE is we can help you look at some of the stuff. We can help you raise some questions, but we can't answer them per se, or we can't give legal advice or accounting advice, because that even if we are, and we have lawyers, we have accountants, but that's not part of our job description.
Yeah, I mean, that's what being a mentor as opposed to being a consultant is about. A consultant you bring in to do a job for you. A mentor you bring in to help you understand your situation and how you can make the best of what you've got.
And Tom, in our remaining time here, let's talk a little bit about some of the other services SCORE offers. So I know we talked about the mentoring, and you contact Tom and they'll give since we're mentioning it, Tom, if folks want to get in touch with Asheville SCORE, what's the best bet?
The best bet is to go to asheville.score.org, and that's SCORE. That's our website. On the website, you can see who our mentors are. You can book an appointment. You can find out what seminars we're offering and things like that. If you'd like to call us, you can reach out to us on 828-417-0555.
Okay, naturally, I'll ask you to repeat that number.
828-417-0555.
Okay, it's ashevillescore.org to get information. And you mentioned a couple of times now, we've talked about seminars. So you can have the mentoring, the one-on-one relationship with a counselor at SCORE. Talk about the seminars a little bit.
The seminars are basically business skills training that we do, and it can be in a wide variety of different areas. It can be, we have a 3-hour seminar on bookkeeping. We have seminars on internet marketing. We have seminars on social media use. We have seminars on market research. We have seminars on sales techniques. So just a variety of different things that you can learn that are kind of the skills that you need to be in a business. One of the things we're starting to get into now are some of more of the softer skills. So negotiation skills, persuasion skills, how to hire and fire people. So those are some of the other things that aren't necessarily traditional business skills, but they're skills that are going to be important if you're going to successfully run a business, particularly if you have sophisticated clients or employees.
Now, with COVID still out there, I'll talk a little bit about how SCORE is offering the seminars.
Yeah, we've been doing our seminars online for about 18 months now, and we're doing all of our counseling online, mostly via Zoom. We had hoped to be back in person in September, but given the Delta variant, it's not clear that that's really achievable. So we're still doing everything online. One of the big things that we did during the early days of COVID-19 was to help people understand what relief programs existed for small businesses. Everybody's heard of the PPP program. There were also disaster assistance loans. There were also, if you were in a particular industry like the food service industry, there was the restaurant revitalization fund that the government ran. So, we tried to act as an information clearinghouse to help people understand what they could qualify for and how they could apply.
And so, again, the same kind of information. If they go to the SCORE website, they can find out that information. They can sign up for the seminars. And how do you feel, in terms, you've done a couple, I know, as I have as well. How do you feel about the virtual seminars?
I don't think, the virtual seminars are great for getting some concepts across. One of the things I found in in-person seminars that was really important was the interaction between the students themselves. They actually taught each other things. And it was a great networking opportunity for them. So, we really are looking forward to getting back to in-person seminars when it's safe. In the meantime, I'd also encourage people to go to the SCORE national website, score.org. There's all kind of information out there that would be helpful to a small business. You can search the library for things like a business plan template, sample financial sheets, how to do social media marketing, how to do crowdfunding. They have just a variety of different kinds of information to help you get at least started in a particular area.
And again, I'll ask you to look in the future, but I guess it's hard to predict. I guess the best answer to say is when is SCORE going to be back in terms of in person? And the answer is?
when we think it's safe. I mean, the thing is, you can do so many things, and you know, I've spent the last 18 months getting accustomed to Zoom and understanding how to run a meeting on Zoom and things like that. And I think many people have. So we recognize you can get a good bit of benefit from a Zoom interaction. So you know, the risk of putting either our clients or our mentors in harm's way just isn't something that we want to undertake unless we're convinced it's safe. I mean, frankly, a lot of our volunteers are 65 or older, and many are immunocompromised. So the last thing we want to do is put them in harm's way.
I see we're up against the clock. Tom Knock, thanks for being my guest at the second half hour of the Blaine's World Show. Mark Cameron, the first half hour, and to Amy Prisnashma, producer. We hope to see you next week. Tom, if you just stay with me 1 second here as I sign off. Hope to see you soon.